periodic data. You have dealt with periodic functions before, even if you didn't realize it. So when you dealt with like sound waves, those type of things in science, those are periodic functions. They happen in waves. They happen in cycles. A periodic function repeats a pattern of y values at regular intervals. One complete pattern is called a cycle. A period is the horizontal length or how long it takes to complete one cycle. All right. So like I said, if you've ever studied sound waves, the length of time it takes to complete an entire wave, that's the period. The cycle is the complete pattern. So they give us some examples here. Example 1 says, analyze the periodic function below. Identify one cycle in 2 ways. All right. And so you can see that they have, for the first one, started right here. And they've gone down. And when they get back up, you can see it's going to repeat at this point. This is one cycle. They didn't necessarily have to start there. For this one, they started down here at the x-axis and went up, back down. And when it got back up to the x-axis, that's also one cycle. All right. So one cycle is one complete turn here. No matter where you start, you have to finish where you started. That is one cycle. All right. So if we look at these, if I start here on A and go up, back down, this is where my cycle would end. This is one cycle. And you can see it starts over. For this one, if I were to go down and back up, you can see that would be in a complete cycle. So there's many ways that you can recognize one cycle of a function, all right? Just depends on where you start as to where it's going to start repeating where you started, all right? So one cycle just means that it is at the beginning to where it starts over, all right? How do you tell then if you have a periodic function? Well, the definition said it repeats a pattern of y values. This one right here is obviously a pattern, right? You can see it's a pattern, but the problem is the y values do not repeat. This is not a periodic function. This is not a periodic function. My y value is here for this one. It's down here for that one. It's down here for that one. So numerically, this does not repeat, even though visually it looks like it does. Does that make sense? Numerically, this does not repeat. It is not periodic. All right. This one, while it's not as pretty, is actually periodic. All right. You can see that if I were to start even here and go down, and then it's going to go up, and then right here, it starts repeating, and it's going to go down, right, and it's going to go back up. And so this one is actually periodic, even though it doesn't look as much as this one does. All right. The y values have to repeat. Numerically, it has to be periodic for it to be a periodic function. The amplitude of the period is half the difference between the maximum and the minimum values. All right. Amplitude is how far away from the middle you get, is basically the definition of amplitude. So they have this dashed line here that represents the middle of this function. All right. The amplitude is the distance away from that. It will go to the highest value and the lowest value the same distance. And so it went up to here and down to here. Maximum and minimum. The amplitude is the distance between those cut in half. And then that middle guy is your midline, which we'll get to later on. So from here to here, so we have, I think they're in ones, right? So this is -1 to +3, right? -1 to +3 is 4 units. So my amplitude is 2. You just cut it in half, all right? Make sense? So if I take my highest value, which is 3, my lowest value, which is -1, the difference between those is 4. My amplitude is going to be half of that because it's going to be exactly from the middle. All right, so my amplitude here would be 2. My amplitude here would be 2. Half the distance from the highest to the lowest values of your period. All right, so let's look at an example here. Find the amplitude of this period. Periodic function. So my lowest value here is -2. My highest value is +4. What's the difference between those two? Right, we're gonna get 6, so what is my amplitude? My amplitude is 3. 5. Right. The highest value is 1. The lowest value is -2. Divide it in half, 1.5.